probably the two most important things that I ever received as gifts were from my bar mitzvah. One was a leather-bound transistor radio, and one was a woolen sack tape recorder, reel-to-reel tape recorder. Just a beautiful piece of machinery. You know, it had a really good little pause button, and I could edit. I could edit these things. And my parents had a, not an Electrohome, but one of those big consoles with the TV, with the radio and the record player and all that. And my dad hooked up the tape recorder into the back of the console so I could record CBC or anything, well, CBC off the TV, direct, not with a mic. So I was recording all my favorite, the Stones and all the great stuff on Ed Sullivan, and Daryl Duke had this amazing show for a while called, not for very long, called Quest, and was a half-hour sort of art show, and they would, everything from the Living Theater Berlin to Bob Dylan and Charlie Mingus and Carlos Montoya, and I would record all that stuff, and I just had, music was in my blood. I was born in 45, so, you know, like high school, for instance, for me, was hell. I mean, that goes for everybody maybe, but it was hell. But I went to Forest Hill Collegiate, where everybody was going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant, follow in their parents' footsteps. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And all I cared about was music and art and movies. And, you know, my life, my career started when I knew what I wanted to do when my dad took me to the Y at Bloor and Bathurst when I was a kid to see movies on Sunday afternoons, and I watched that stage, and aside from the movie, I wondered what was going on, and I wanted a stage in my house, and all I cared about was that. I ended up failing twice and going to summer school twice. And, but nobody knew what I was nobody knew what I was interested in. And to the point where I was so bad in high school that when I was going into grade 13 for the first time, or the second time, I don't know, the principal, who looked like Adolf Hitler, sent out a questionnaire, what you wanted to do, what you planned to do when you got out of high school. And I said, I don't know. And anyway, they tested me to see what I wanted to do when I got out of high school. And they come, after a week of testing, the answer was I wanted to be a DJ. So, you know, they got it. I was a DJ on radio for quite a long time. Over the years, I did during the Edge days, like 1980, I had a show called The Edge of Morning, which was on at 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. Sunday mornings on Q107, strangely enough. And I was playing my music.
I remember it.
The only reason I left the show was because I wanted to get $50 a week, and he wouldn't pay me after I had done it for about a year. And I said, well, fuck that, right? My parents used to go to New York a lot, and sometimes they'd take me. And we would go to, at night, if we weren't going to a theater, they'd take me go down to the Village. I don't know if I realized it at the time, but my parents were pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And they would, probably the first band I ever booked, not with money, with cash, but what are organized, was a band called the Terriers, a folk group. They had taken me down to the bitter end.
Mm-hmm.
And the Terriers were playing, and they were a top. They didn't have hit. They had hits before the time that I saw them. They were a trio, with Alan Arkin was in them, and Eric Darling, who, as I say, replaced Pete Seeger at one point. And but then they became a quartet, and they were really an incredible group. I just loved them, and I talked to them and all that, and got them a gig at the Fifth Peg on Church Street in the early '60s. And they played there a couple times, and then they eventually headlined a big hootenanny at Maple Leaf Gardens. We basically, Gary and I, booked out of our record collections, or people that we dreamed of seeing. I mean, I had dreamed of seeing Sun Ra forever, and ended up booking them at the Horseshoe in whenever it was, '78, and most of the artists we booked, we really were into, and the way I operate it was, I could never try to sell, which you have to do, sell a show that I wasn't into.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't say, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there were bands, obviously you mentioned OMD, but they weren't like favorites of mine. But, I knew that record companies would promote the hell of them, so I didn't. But I took a special interest in the people that I really admired and, really wanted to see. And Wilder Penfield, who worked at the Sun, I guess, maybe the Telegram at the time, I don't know. Anyway, he said something that I just really made me feel good, because he said he would always check out what I was promoting, and I was obviously promoting every day like a million things. He would always check out what I was promoting because he trusted me.
Mm-hmm.
He might not like it and do something, but he would always take it seriously. Larry's was, it was so unusual because it was the biggest shithole in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, the basement room that held the club could have been the best club, might have been the best club Toronto ever had. The sound with the low ceiling was incredible. The sound man had to be, I would still say he might be the best sound man in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's not, I don't think he lives in Toronto anymore, but Ken McNeil. Amazing. And as a testament to that, when you get Sun Ra, the man, not, or Ornette Coleman's agent, or son, DiNardo,
Mm-hmm.
calling, they want to come back. Can you imagine, like, Ornette Coleman saying he wants to play Larry's Hideaway? They loved it.
Mm.
The sound was amazing. I mean, obviously we treated them probably better than that genre of music, jazz, was treated in the States, because we had a personal interest in it. But
Mm-hmm.
they loved it. They loved it. They always wanted to come back. This is the best club we play in North America. They didn't like the Village Vanguard and the Village Gate and whatever, Blue Note, but they loved Larry's.
Right.
It was a hotel above,
Mm-hmm.
by the hour, and they had, residents there as well. But, they gave us a room which could be a dressing room, and, where interviews would be done. And I remember one time, Roy Harper was up there in the dressing room being interviewed by the New Music. And Roy Harper, was an eccentric British musician, used to open for Led Zeppelin and the whole thing. He's up there doing the interview, and a cockroach goes right across the coffee table onto the food. And they picked it up. It was a real pigsty. On my 40th birthday, 1985, 40th, my dad had just passed away, and we had booked Alan Toussaint to play solo.
Mm-hmm.
And Catherine Lalonde, who was a friend and our caterer, she had brought in a birthday cake. So, we had dinner for Alan and the whole thing, eating there, and everything was okay. And, then it was kind of time to open the doors and Alan to relax. And so she put the cake in a back room for after the show. When we went into the back room, it was like the Alamo. With cockroaches. It was completely attacked by cockroaches. I to this day, I wish I had a camera. I'd had a camera. Oh, it was a great show. I mean, the history of music, really, just him and his piano
Yeah.
sang Happy Birthday to Me.